Hello everybody, this is my Killa Cosplay video from Escape from Tarkov, where I'm going to show you guys my thought process on how this version of Killa came to be. Killa is a boss who wears an Adidas tracksuit, who likes to spend his time roaming around the Interchange Mall, terrorizing people with his RPK. So, this is just my personal opinion of what the female Killa would look like. Because I wanted it to be cool and tactical, but I didn't want it to stray too far away from what an actual female Killa would be like. So I've seen a lot of AI depictions of her, and they all have different things, but this one right here is my perception of how Killa would be if Killa were a girly girl. The first thing that I made for this cosplay was a tennis skirt. I wanted the stripes to be vertical, like the ones on the jacket, you know? It took me 3 days to make all the stripes because I had to use a stretchy material for the stripes so that it could stretch along with the skirt. But every time I was sewing it, I would be pushing down too hard and pulling it, and it would end up with a wonky line sewed down all stretched out. Every time I did that, I just take it apart and do it all over again, and that's why it took 3 days. And I tried really hard not to make the zipper on accident not centered in the back, but something went really wrong with how wide I made the skirt, and it just ended up being that the very thing I tried so hard not to do ended up happening. So once I was done with that, I worked on the jacket. So initially the jacket that I got from Amazon that I just straight up ordered, it came in and something just looked really off. It was so baggy. I didn't really like it. It wasn't the vibe that I was going for at all. So what I did was I took out the zipper, I ripped all the seams off of the zipper, and then I cropped it, and then I added a newer zipper, a smaller, shorter one. But then once I tried it on, it still felt really weird and baggy, even though it was cropped to the perfect length that I wanted it to be. So I grabbed my serger again, and then I drew with chalk some curved lines along the sides so that when I serged it down, it would be way more form-fitting. Kind of took me a little while deciding how exactly I was gonna implement the armor. Should I even make armor? I could have just kept the jacket open and then worn a cute top underneath that said Killa, but that just didn't make sense to me, if Killa was actually a girl. Wouldn't Killa want to be armored, armor isn't just for boys. That'd just be weird, right? Why can't girls wear armor too? So I decided, okay, fine, I'm just gonna make some armor. And I consulted some of my tactical friends who like stuff like this, and I asked them questions what are these rolly thingies on the sides for? And we decided together that those are probably to keep the rigs in place, which makes sense because you don't want to run around and then have your rig sliding off your shoulder and then all your mags falling out. So the first thing that I did was make a vest. I made a square neck so that I could make a square collar. I cut out little thin pieces of EVA foam to be the soft armor and made them little trapezoids. That was gonna be the base of the collar. It would be able to stick straight up, protect my thorax, and just look cool. So for the armor plate, I just got this piece of EVA foam, and then I made it into the shape that I wanted it to be by using my heat gun to just blast it, and when it's hot, it's malleable and it cools down, it stays like that. With that, I was able to shape the armor plate into exactly the shape that I wanted it to be so that it would fit me. Then, since I just had a vest, I needed some way to strap in the sides. I got these buckles, and I made these long strips of fabric with even heavier fabric inside of it. And then I kind of just clipped around the thing, just testing on how I want it to look like. And then I ultimately ended up with one long strip going around the back and reaching both sides. And then for the rig. I didn't want to do it because I was lazy. I thought that it would take me a long time. But I know how to do a rig. I've already done the IKEA rig, and I was already 2 months into my project. So I just ordered this one from Amazon, and then actually looks pretty cool, and I kind of like it. So for the helmet, I used EVA foam. And I watched several tutorials about how to make a dome out of EVA foam. But it turns out you need to have a dome already, which I don't really have. So I ended up doing 2 versions of this. The first time, my fingers were just too sensitive to the heat gun, and I didn't have gloves. So when I was trying to heat shape it, I didn't really bend it too well. And then the second time, I actually used a basketball. A basketball was like the closest thing to the size of my head in the shape of a sphere I could find around my house. But by the end of it, what I ultimately had to do was get thick pieces of foam, hot glue it inside so that my smallish head could fit in here. And then the first time I actually kind of liked the face shield that I made. So what I did was just cut it off and then just re-glue it to the new one. And then I primed it using this thing called Plastidip, which is this rubber spray coating that people like to use on their car rims. And I actually really liked it because it had this very smooth mattifying effect that doesn't look brushed on with paintbrushes. And then it looked so smooth, it looked very realistic. I wanted it to look like he got a real helmet, but then used his hands and paintbrushes to like paint on the stripes. So I hand painted with paintbrushes the white stripes so that it would look like realistic. Then came the ambitious idea of making the gun. This gun took me like a whole month, and it's been something that I've been wanting to do since I started cosplaying. And I always knew that I was capable of doing something like this. I just knew that it'd be very, very time consuming. And this isn't real. This isn't real, guys. Does it look real? Because it's not. How it started was, I got these screenshots of the gun in the game. I got the side views, top views, bottom views, and front views, and I put them all into Adobe Illustrator. But I made the canvas size the size that the real length of the gun would be in real life. And I lined up the side view of that, so then I could just trace it, and then when I print it out, it would be the life-size length of the real gun. So that's how I made my blueprint of it. I printed it all out, and then using that, I was able to cut out even smaller pieces of where I drew the lines and trace that onto EVA foam, and then cut out every piece just like that. So the very first thing that I started with was the stock. I got some PVC pipe that would be the same diameter as the buffer tube, and then glued on with contact cement some foam and glued on 2 other pieces. So basically the stock would only be like 3 pieces, technically. It would just be this like triangular thing here, the butt of the stock, and then the buffer tube. And then I just use a Dremel to like do all the little fine details here and there. There's obviously like a lot more detail that goes on the real stock, but this is my version of it, and you can't even really tell, honestly. Once the stock was done, like, it looked really cool, and then that kind of just really inspired me to get the rest of the gun done. So then I worked on the receiver. I glued another PVC pipe on top of it to hold the skeleton of the receiver, and then I sandwiched it between 2 pieces of EVA foam that were basically the shape of the receiver in 2D form. But then I had to do like some 3D stuff to it. So the dust cover has like this indent along the side that I basically carved out with my Dremel, and then used foam clay to like blend it out, like just even it out. The next thing I did was the pistol grip. And I'm actually really proud of the pistol grip. Like, I was super duper excited to work on it because it looks so like ergonomic, and I just like couldn't wait to sculpt it so that I can hold it, you know? And what I did for this is basically I stacked like several layers of EVA foam in the same shape together, and then I carved out the sides so that they would be smooth with my Dremel. And I'm so proud of it. Like, it took me a couple tries to get this one, but I'm just so proud of it. It looks so good, and it feels really nice too. Like, I don't know how many ergonomic points you get to, but I just really like it. I'm proud of this one. And then the next part was just very easy. I just put the trigger on with like some thin EVA strips of foam, and then I was good to work on the drum mag. Basically, the drum mag is really just a cone, and I needed the circumference of the smaller circle and the big circle. And once I made that cone, what I had to do was get the circumference of a little smaller circle that would be glued down flush into the inside of the cone. So I cut out like little sticks of EVA foam and like glued them to the sides as like columns or like pillars, so that when I pushed in the smaller circles, they would not cave in, they would like stay there. Also, at a certain point after making that cone, I realized that there's like a hole in it with another cone going inward and like a little stick coming out of it. So I had to make that by cutting out that smaller circle, dremeling the edges so that it'd be smooth again, and then making another tiny little cone that goes in, and then blending it out with foam clay. And then for like these little lines right here, I really had to like cut out 15, 17 different little strips of EVA foam and then carve out each one so that's like completely rounded. I probably could have done this with like clay later on, but this is what it ended up being. with the skills that I had at the time. Then for the rest of these little details, these are just very simple to make. I just got some thin craft foam and then just glued them on. What I had to do a lot of was use some clay to like blend it out, fix what I just did, and then let it dry, and then try carving it out again. I used just a bunch of like clay. I did just so much sculpting to cover all the seams as best as I could. And it turned out not too bad. I was really worried about this being really ugly, but it doesn't look that bad from far away. So for the handguard, I sandwiched one long sheet of EVA foam to basically round out the top. Because in contrast to the back half of the gun, which is all rectangular except for that indent right here, this part of the gun is like rounded. So that's why I use like one long sheet of EVA foam to like wrap around it instead of two flat pieces. So with that, I guess this is like where your hand goes. It's supposed to be like slanted and like curved downward right here. And this is like really difficult. Like it took me several tries to get the right shape of, because I couldn't figure out how I was gonna do a curve going down this way and then one also going down this way. And it also had to just be like thick enough to go down at that slope, you know? It took me several tries. The EVA foam that I had, like none of it was like thick enough for that type of slope. So what I ended up doing was doing the best that I could with my Dremel, and then going in with foam clay and just sculpting out the slants. It would just be like a smooth transition. I had to wait another like couple days because I had to let that foam clay dry before I sanded it. So for these like oval thingies, I tried my best to like Dremel carve them out. But like even out of like the 150 like bits that I have, like I didn't have one that would carve that out cleanly. I tried like 20 different kinds and it just ended up looking the way that it looks right now. I was stressing over it like a lot in the beginning, but towards the end I was just like, you know what? This is like one small detail that you can't even really see from a certain distance if you squint. And then for the barrel, luckily I was able to like just see like at any normal craft store, they have these cylindrical foam tubes that are like the perfect size for a barrel. Like I think they made them like that on purpose so they could be like the barrel of a gun. And these I think are like rails for like a flashlight or a laser. And I left them on in the game, so I ended up with them on in real life. So for the rails, I just cut out like a long strip of EVA foam at a slant so that it would be beveled along each side. And once I had that long slanted stick of EVA foam, I sliced it up into like thinner tiny pieces so that it could make the rails. The last thing that I did was just a bunch of sanding and adding foam clay to fill in all the gaps to like make it as smooth as possible so that when I painted it, it looked like a monolith. I just used so many different like types of foam. I had like red, white, gray, all going on, and it just looked really weird. So I didn't know if it was gonna look good or not until I primed it. And so I used the same stuff I used on the helmet, which is the Plasti Dip, and it made it like all like mattified and black and just, it looked real. And I was so proud of it, but I still wanted to like add paint and like a top coat to it to like protect the surface, because I noticed that like the surface of the plastic can just get like really dusty. So I took my airbrush after figuring out like how to use an airbrush, and I tried my best to like evenly spray carbon black paint. And then I took this stuff called Liquitex top coat, and it was mattifying so that it could give me this like real gun look, so that now if I go out in public with it, I can get arrested. If I could do this like all over again, I would make it so much faster and it would look so much better too. But this is my very first ever gun prop build, and I'm not sad about it. So I just want to say like thank you to all the homies who like believed in me and played video games with me and just like were excited to like see this. I'm just really thankful that like people believed in me and like were like cheering me on to like finish this. So thank you guys for watching this, and if anyone has any questions on how I did something specific, you can just ask me and I'd be very happy to help.